What's up, everyone? Hopping in here real quick to put a disclaimer on this episode. Trigger warning. We talk about this dude named the Ice Cream Man later on in this episode, and it is very disturbing to say the least. So don't do this a lot, but you have been warned. Hope you enjoy. So it's evident she was misusing baseball funds. Now, as to how much of that, probably most of it. I'm not sure, but
it's important to remember that what I could tag to her that was actual money lost. Okay, I'm counting actual money lost is about 20 to 25. That's actual
1,000?
money. Yes.
Okay.
Actual money lost that should have been here. Okay.
That
The
you
rest-
can say Natalie bought this.
Yes.
Okay. Welcome to Creepalachia. Today we are diving deep into the depths of private investigation. I am so thankful to be joined by James Quesenberry. Thank you for joining, sir. You have been so you was telling me before you were a PI, you was it the Beckley Police Department that you said?
Yeah. Beckley Police, and then worked at the Wyoming County Sheriff's Office for a little bit.
Perfect. Pull that mic up to right in front of your mouth there. There we go. All right. And then move it over this way just a little. There we go. Perfect.
Okay.
So, and now your business is Armed Security Investigations and Consulting Firm.
Yes.
And what region are you located in?
I'm my office is in Shady.
Oh, cool. Okay. So, kind of your background in law enforcement. Let's talk about that first. And also, people, you did do some work on the Natalie Cochran case, the Ponzi scheme,
Yes.
and the baseball.
Yeah, mine was geared more towards the baseball
Oh, okay, gotcha.
aspect.
Yeah, so we'll definitely get into that. But yeah, so your background in law enforcement.
I started out years ago. I actually worked at the prison some too in Mount Olive a long time ago, but then ultimately went through a couple smaller police departments and then ultimately got hired at Beckley Police Department, worked there for probably about 4 or 5 years. And then ultimately left there and went to the sheriff's office in Wyoming County for a little bit and then started this business.
Oh, so you was in Wyoming. I lived in Wyoming County for a little while.
Yeah, I'm originally from Wyoming County. When I was a kid, I grew up in Mullins.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that and up towards Amigo on the Raleigh County line.
Yeah, they're fancy now. They got the whole expressway going right into Mullins.
It's a whole lot faster getting there now.
Moving on up. Well, awesome. So, what kind of drifted you toward the investigative aspect of it and potentially, eventually starting your own business?
Well, when I was a police officer, I got into, I worked all different kinds of things, particularly on I want to say my favorite, but I don't think that really sounds right. Is I worked on the ICAC task force, done a lot of, sex crimes, child abuse, stuff like that. And while that was some of the worst thing you could see, it was actually the most rewarding in a lot of ways because you got to actually put people who committed those types of crimes in jail. So that was that. But I worked on all different kinds of crimes, different stuff like that. But ultimately that led me to, I stuck to that for a long time. And then when I was always in that up until the point in time I left, worked with some of the state troopers and stuff on that task force and served a lot of warrants on guys with that. And then ultimately it just got to where I wanted to see the other side. So this was kind of my retirement plan, actually, but I just decided to go that route sooner. And there's naturally there is a whole lot more money in that than working as a police officer, which I still do some stuff law enforcement related and other stuff too. So, but I don't do that here. So like naturally, if you're a private investigator, you don't want to do the private investigating in the county that you work in as a police officer. Right. So I still work some places as a police officer, but I do this in Raleigh County and most of the surrounding counties.
Oh, cool.
But I'm licensed to go all over the state and in Virginia. So I do work in Virginia too.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. So, and sorry, one more time, just pull your mic up a little closer. There we go. Okay. So, and I'd say it was rewarding in an aspect of you're kind of protecting people who don't necessarily have a voice. Is that what, like, you're kind of obviously the most vulnerable part of society. You're able to try and protect them and put these, jackasses in jail, in prison.
It's kind of a funny way to look at it, but the way I see it, but it's that, but at the same time, when you go out here and you're a police officer, some people appreciate everything you do, and then some people don't. But the ones that always appreciated everything you did was the kids that you helped to get out of these bad situations. So it was kind of like you're helping somebody that appreciates what you're doing for them, and you're trying to do it, and then you're getting them out of that bad situation. So the wins were big, and they felt big, right? But then if you lost, it was a whole nother kind of devastating.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, my goodness, I could only imagine. So, and I'm sorry, I don't know if I asked you this. How many years did you do that exactly?
I was a police officer at Beckley from probably, I think, late 2011 to right at 2016, a little after, right at 2016. Then I was at Wyoming County Sheriff's Office for about a year before I did this.
Yeah. Did you work different shifts, or was it day shift, night shift, or?
Yeah, it was different. I mean, depending on where you was, I didn't work day shift a whole lot. I just never was a day shift kind of guy. I just always liked to be out at night, and at least evening shift. Evening shift was probably my favorite. The night shift wasn't bad, but I worked a lot of, especially when I worked for Beckley, I worked a lot of DUIs, highway safety stuff, different things like that too. So, but evening shift was always when it was the busiest. So that's when I would preferred to be there with the kind of types of crimes that I would work on,
Yeah. Are there a lot of drunk drivers in Raleigh County? I mean, I would guess there probably are, unfortunately, but I'm just curious, like, for every 100 cars, how many people are drunk that fall out of it?
I don't know, but there's quite a few, but I mean, I think it's probably toned down quite a bit over the last few years, which I haven't been there doing that probably in about 8 years here, but I would say the numbers have probably decreased. I mean, I work with a lot of guys that work there on highway safety, and they were excellent guys, did a great job. I mean, some of my best friends were I mentioned his name, Frankie Shelton, probably one of the best DUI guys and one of my good friends that I've ever seen do that. I learned a lot from Frankie.
Yeah, he just got in a car wreck.
Really?
Frankie did, yeah. If it's Frankie, he just got a new position, right? It's that Frankie.
Yeah.
That just got, he got in a car wreck. He's doing good, but it's pretty bad. Salisville Mountain, actually.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, man. It blew the car. The car was flipping and then hit him. I mean, it was like a really bad wreck, but he's doing, he's on the mend. But yeah, Frankie's super nice. Probably one of the nicest dudes I've ever met.
Yeah.
So, being a police officer, how did this community of West Virginia, did you kind of notice the community support, or was it the contrary? Like, was it a tough job to do, or what would you say the response would be community wise? Because I know nationally, I think police get a bad rap a lot of times. There's bad apples in every bunch, and unfortunately, these couple of people shine a negative light on police, I think. And I think the majority of police interactions go actually exceptionally well. But again, I have no experience.
I think so too. I think that that's really the way I see it too. And from being inside of that, you're always going to have a few that do things they're not supposed to, or skirt those lines and stuff like that. Or around here, I mean, naturally, I'm not going to say that there's not a couple of them around here, but for the most part, they were all great guys that I work with. I could go down a list. I won't do that, but I could go down a list of all the guys around here that are great guys, do an excellent job and take their job seriously, but around here, I mean, I've been outside of here and to different trainings and stuff like that and everything. The one thing that I've seen that kind of lacks around here is not to get off topic, and I'll drop back to it.
No, you're doing good.
The training that they get, that law enforcement officers get, they get certain training based on budget and what's available, and they get the same training a lot repetitively, and sometimes it's not really what they need, right? So which kind of is what got me into teaching college, because a lot of these kids are going, I've got numerous students that are in the DNR now. One of them's getting ready to go to the Secret Service or the DEA, whichever one he picks.
Oh, wow.
I didn't really know how the college aspect of it would get into the way I do things. But then once I got in there, it got to where, I realized that these are young adults that are going to be going into this. So if you want to make law enforcement better, you train these individuals that are going in better. And if you give them a good base set of skills, then they have the ability to do better when they get there if they learn from somebody and they learn the basics before they get there, and especially around the ethical realm, So looking at that, I think the community response around here was, the majority of the community was happy with, the law enforcement around here. I think they still are.
Sure. I feel that way too.
But again, you've got a few, and that's another reason for this. I think there has to be a set of checks and balances in the scales, if you will. You know what I mean? That the system, I think we got the greatest system in the world, but it's got its shortcomings too, right? So I think that when I built this business, and what I did was, and a lot of people get the idea that being a private investigator means I'm out here watching people's wives or their husbands or this and that all the time. I won't say I've never done that, but that's not always the case. The majority of what I do is, and the guys that work for me, I do some security. I do, those kind of investigations rarely, but I do a lot of work for defense attorneys throughout the state and even in Virginia, and investigate criminal cases. And like, I'm a certified child forensic interviewer too.
Oh,
so
wow.
Like, I review a lot of those cases and different things and the protocol and stuff for that as well.
That's so important. All right, real quick, I got to ask, have you ever caught someone like making out at McDonald's and you were like, you don't have to say who, we don't need to do that. I'm just curious, like, on that side of things, how does that work?
Yeah, I've caught a lot of people, in I won't say a lot, but I've caught a good handful of people doing something that they shouldn't have been doing.
Yeah.
When they're married, but are out gallivanting around doing things they aren't supposed to. That's led to a lot of divorces. I've actually been.
Well, congratulations.
So it's
I love my wife, by the way.
But it's I don't get out. It's not like you see on TV. I don't get out and be like, gotcha. It's like, I just go back and show them the pictures.
Right. It's sad. You got to be like, oh man, I thought that this one wasn't a cheating scumbag, and now I got to tell their significant other they are.
Yeah.
So, but maybe sometimes you find people are nice and weren't doing anything wrong. I'm hoping.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There is times where they're not really doing anything and the other one's just being paranoid. I have seen that too. But, a funny story I'll tell you about. I'm not going to mention any names.
Sure. Yeah. I don't want to get sued.
I had a guy that, he thought his wife was cheating on him, and ultimately she was, and with his best friend. And, he was kind of nervous about it. And he's like, and in the state of West Virginia and several other states, you can, it's legal to place a GPS tracker on your spouse's car.
That's good to know.
So especially if it's marital property, but it's really easy as long as your name's on the title, right? Because you have the right to put whatever you want on there or have it put on there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working with this guy, and he was out of town, and he's like, I told him, I was like, you need to put this tracker on there. It'd be easier for you just to do it. He's like, no, I'll do it. And he's like, I want you to do it. Not he'll do it, but he said, I want you to do it. So I'm like, this would be so much easier if you would just do it. You're really, because if I get caught doing it and it's sitting out in the driveway, I mean, the operation's over. I mean, you're still going to pay me. You know what I mean? So, and he's like, it's okay. You know, this certain time, nobody will be there. I mean, they'll be in the bed, you know, all this stuff. And everything.
Some of these redneck ladies may be packing heat too. Like you may get, get a gun pulled on you or something.
So, well, and that's always a risk.
Right.
So I'm like, I get this plan, you know, we're going to do it this way. I got a guy with me. We're going to go down the road. We're going to drop it off. He's going to drop me off. He's going to go down the dead end. By the time he does, it's literally just a magnet and just stick it. Right. So I go and nobody's supposed to be there. And I warned him, you know, so I go and I walk down the road. Nobody's out. It's dark. It's not a very well lit place. Nice neighborhood. And when I get out, I go up to the back of the car, and right as I kneel down, his daughter and I'm not sure how old she was. She was probably 16, so 17. She's out walking the dog, and she comes around the house, and I'm at the back of the car. And I'm like, and I mean, we're looking at each other. And I'm like, just out of the blue, I yelled out, I don't even remember what it was. I yelled out a dog's name. And I'm like, I'm looking for my dog. And I start hollering this dog's name. And she looks at me and I'm like, I didn't mean to scare you. And I made out like she scared me. And she's just looking at me and I'm waiting on her just to go ham. And she never did. And she looked, she's like, oh, what's its name? And I told her that name again that I made up. And she starts helping me look for the dog.
Oh.
And I'm like, okay, well, and then here comes my ride back down the street. I was like, all right, we're going to go back in. I guess he's not around here. And I left and I called the guy and I was like, you're putting it on there.
Okay. You didn't get it placed?
No. I mean, like she was right as I was at the back of the car and I was like, I'm not doing that.
Way to play it off.
Yeah. So, it was really, cause that could have went south really fast, but that's the kind of stuff you get into. And I don't fool with a whole lot of that just because of that reason, is because you get in that stuff with people. And then ultimately he did put the tracker on there. He did.
Good job.
And then, what was strange about it too, was it went like 2 weeks and she hadn't done nothing. And I mean, like I sat there and waited for 2 weeks. She hadn't done nothing. And then like all of a sudden it was like, then she just went outside her normal routine for this one afternoon.
Ding, 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 ding.
Went straight to the hotel parking lot.
Oh man.
And when I got there was only like 5 cars in the parking lot. So I'm like, I start texting him and I'm like, hey, there's only 5 cars here. There's one parked right next to hers. I'm going to send it to you. I sent it to him and he's like, this can't be real. And I was like, why, do you know who the car is? And he's like, yes, it's my best friend. Man. And I'm like, so ultimately as the rest of it went down, you know how that goes, but.
Well, hopefully they're still not friends.
No, they're
okay.
not. No, they're not together anymore.
Oh man. That's like OJ and his best friend. Oh man, what was his name? OJ stole his woman, his first wife. He stole it from his best friend, and they kept on being friends. He bought a Bronco, the same Bronco that he had. Oh man, what was his name? I won't bog the show down. I'll think of it later. But anyway, it's weird how humans work. Well, that was excellent. So, you were telling me earlier, let's go ahead and talk about your role in the Natalie Cochran stuff. So, which you were featured on the 2020 episode.
Yes.
Did an interview, and you had some, like, not body cam footage, but was it hidden cam footage type stuff at a yard sale I was watching? How did you kind of get involved in the Natalie Cochran situation? And you mentioned it was the baseball portion.
Right. So I got involved in that when my friend Chris Davis called me. And when they called him and told him that there was no money in the bank account, and plus there's texts that I have pictures of where she tells him that, it's all okay. She's already taken care of it. But one of the biggest lump sums of money, which didn't all belong to the baseball team. Okay. Like they had a raffle there, a gun raffle, bingo. Sorry, not a raffle, but they had a gun bingo there and gave away a bunch of guns, different stuff. And it was to be half between the youth baseball league, Shady Spring Youth Baseball, which some people confuse as Little League. And just for a disclaimer, it has nothing to do with Little League, but it's Shady Spring Youth Baseball League and the Shady Spring High School volleyball team. So from everything that I could find, the money was like $32,000 and some change. I got the paperwork on it, but that money walked out of the gym, depending on who you talk to, depending on whose hands it walked out in. Okay. So I don't know if you want to discuss that.
No, this is the baseball portion of things.
Yes.
Okay.
This is the baseball portion.
And if anyone hadn't been charged, we don't have to mention names,
Okay.
but yeah.
So depending on who you talk to, depends on whose hands the money walked out that night in, but it was over $32,000 in cash. So that $32,000 then disappears. Okay. Which is, from everything that I could find and talking to people, it was extremely difficult for the volleyball team got their money back, is my understanding. Okay. So they got their half, the $16,000 and some change. They got their half back from Natalie.
Is that the $16,000 check that I saw in the records that potentially bounced, or no? Is this a different check?
Well, that depends. See, I've got a check in here for $16,000 that she wrote for $16,000, which was supposed to be the baseball's half, and tried to deposit it in the baseball account. So if that's what you have, that's not the check that bounced back to the high school.
Okay, gotcha. I won't speculate then.
Yeah, that $16,000. I'm not sure how they got that back, but to speculate, that came from, and I'm not going to mention any names, but you'll be able to get from what I tell you. That came from her and probably her close
friend,
ally. Yeah,
gotcha. That's good to know. So you start diving in, and you got a whole sack full of records here. Did you personally start to see some odd discrepancies with the baseball portion to lead you to think like, hey, wait a minute? Like,
oh yeah. So when he calls me, when Chris calls me, he's like, hey, we want you to come and talk to the board. The board wants to come talk to us. We want you to look at this, see what you can find. So I go down there, I start talking to them, different things, and what they're supposed to have, how much money's supposed to be in there. There should have been quite a bit of money already in there. You know, we don't have this money from here. The account's been frozen. How much money's in there? And I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it's $3 and some change. It was on that like they had the paperwork. I've got it here if we want to look at it, but
sure.
It's like $33 or $3 and some change that's frozen, and that's still frozen now. That was in that account. So they're all wondering where their money is. I mean, this league takes a good bit of money to function, right? I mean, they play at Epling Stadium. I mean, it's, parents either have to raise the money or they have to, pay it themselves. So sometimes they would do fundraisers, different stuff like that they had money from, and different things. But so when they call me down there, I go down there and talk to them. I go talk to all of them. They start telling me all this stuff, and then everybody's wanting me to look at it. So I get as much of the records as I can. Certain parties tried to acquire the records that would be available, that would normally be available from the treasurer before she got arrested, different things like that. And other parties that were on that as well, that were not the only two people that had access to the money.
Mm-hmm.
So start trying to acquire those records and get limited stuff. Can't get everything. So I go get all of the bank statements, which is easy. I get some receipts, different things, and goes through and talk to, all these people and everything else. And when I immediately looking at the bank statements, I knew something was wrong, because it's supposed to be a 501(c), and there's no nonprofit. There's no way that what some of these expenditures are coming out of there should have been spent.
Sure. Like what? Which you don't have to get too specific, but examples of things that were being purchased that can't be for a baseball team. Is that what you mean?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah. So everything from TJ Maxx to, and I've got them all. I mean, there's TJ Maxx, there's Olive Garden. I mean, there's Amazon purchases.
Is this is where the bow was purchased, correct?
Yes.
From the okay, for the Hamiltons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's in there too.
Yep.
And so naturally there shouldn't be a bow. I guess some of this stuff I try to look at. What I did originally was I looked at it. There were some things that I knew couldn't be right, and there was some things that I couldn't say they were wrong. You know what I'm saying? By looking at it. Like, I can't say that they didn't go buy a bow and then raffle it off. I mean, ultimately, I found out
now we can.
Case, but
yeah, sure.
But, and then the coolers, okay, like there's a right at $3,000 purchase for Yeti coolers on there. I mean, but I couldn't track any raffles that brought in any money, right? There's no like real deposits from it. It's like she's washing money out, right? So I've never seen her taxes, so I can't say that she was doing things illegally with her taxes. But other than for status, why would anybody else make a donation to anything other than out of the kindness of her heart, which we both know now wasn't the case, right?
Sure,
so,
yeah.
I mean, but other than status, what is it? A tax deduction, right? So I don't know that she claimed it, but I mean, that would be hard to say unless without having proof of that. But I don't know why anybody else would do that. But there was a lot of money washed back through that company. Hey, look at this, and this is what. So technically, part of what raises it up so high is if you get into the brass tacks of it, about 20 to 25,000 of it was actual money that belonged to the league, okay, that came from legitimate sources and went in, okay, that went missing.
Of the 32, is that what you're talking about?
No, it was upwards of 60.
Oh, okay.
Total.
Gotcha.
So, but how it compounds is because technically, whether you're the treasurer or not, the minute you write that $10,000 check to that 501(c) and you've donated it, you can't go spend it back at crowdfunder.com and TJ Maxx and Olive Garden and everywhere else, right? Which is exactly what was happening. And then it was like right at 75, between 75 and 8,200. It's in there too in the bank statements in football equipment that was bought for the middle school and gave to the middle school out of that money. So
out of the baseball money?
Out of the baseball.
That was paid
that
for. That
was middle school football. That was the actual school football team, not midget league. So that money was given, that equipment was purchased through, it starts with an R. I can't remember that. It's not Rothko. It's,
not Russell Athletics?
No,
or
it's in the paperwork.
Okay.
But it's a weird name. It's a 2-part name, but it's a strange name, but it's a company, I think, out of North Carolina. But the sleds and stuff were purchased. It was like 7,500, it's between 7,500 and 8,200.
How many people had access to use these funds? Like, did they have a bunch of debit cards floating around, or
2 people had access to that money, and it could only be the signers on the checks, and only one person had a card that I'm aware of, and that was Natalie.
Got it.
But 2 people had access to be a signer on the account.
Would they have had a reason to buy football equipment?
No.
Did they know anyone on the team, or maybe were they being nice? Because as we know, the bow was bought for the Hamiltons as a gift because their kid was sick.
It's the same concept.
Yeah. So it's the same thing. It's like, oh, look at.
It's the same concept. Mike didn't know where I would imagine he knew about the middle school getting the football equipment because he's in with the football program and stuff like that. But he didn't know where the money was coming from.
Sure. Yeah.
Because everything that I looked at here, that was a big part of this whole thing, was that this showed that she was the one going in making the purchase. Now, the people that I talked to said that they spoke to a woman, all this different stuff and everything else, but she's writing the checks for this. She's writing the checks for this. Her signature's on the checks. I have a lot of the canceled checks, and he doesn't know, but he thinks that they're giving money. They're doing this for the football program, but he doesn't know that she's spending it out of here. That was the big thing.
Yeah. And he didn't ultimately know, I mean, really, according to the text evidence, anything until the week before.
Right. And this continues on, and a lot of this goes on and continues on after he's deceased.
Oh, okay. With the baseball?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So in the time frame, a lot of it is right up. I mean, I don't know if you want me to get.
Oh yeah, we can do show and tell all day.
Is it okay if I push this?
Oh yeah, I have. Yeah, we are not in any hurry. I will keep the dead air going while you find some show and tell.
So like if
pull that mic up to you after that though. There you go. Perfect.
So and that way I'll be able to tell you the names of the company and everything.
That's more. Well, I say it's about half the documents for the murder trial. Just so this is all baseball stuff?
Yeah.
Jeez Louise. Okay.
So the company, like there's 2 purchases on here to GoDaddy too for something. We never.
Probably some type of hosting for a website maybe?
Yeah, but there was no
email.
There was no website for the baseball league.
I bet you could track where that went to, like what site. And now I know they had a website for their businesses.
Yeah.
I don't know I'm just speculating.
Well, see what I did was, cause like, for instance, and I'll give you this and tell you this on here with this, like there's straight ATM withdrawals here too at the end. And this is in June after, cause he died on what day?
February 11th.
That's right.
And he was poisoned on the 6th.
Yep. So that's almost 3 months after he's deceased. She's still making ATM withdrawals, paying GoDaddy. I'll just to show you this right here.
Because this account wasn't frozen, right?
No, this is the account that was frozen.
Oh, this was frozen.
But they didn't freeze it. They didn't freeze it until the end. So if you look at this, all of these purchases here on this part right here are from April of 2019, April 2nd.
Oh, yeah.
All of these. So you got Intuit TurboTax for $174.88. To my knowledge, there was, even though she would have been responsible for that, I couldn't find where there's any tax return filed for Shady Spring Youth Baseball.
So she's paying for her taxes, probably. Okay, so most likely.
There's a AT&T $200 bill payment. We definitely didn't have no phones. Okay, so customer deposits, there's different things here up until the point, because like she switches banks. So what happens is when you look at this, the city one here ran from, that was from December of, I think that would have been December of 18. Yeah. 12/31 of 18. So that incorporates December. City runs up until about March. March 29th.
Mm-hmm.
And then she closes the account. That check bounces.
Which check?
The $16,000.
Okay, yeah, that's the one I had in the.
That was deposited on 3/18 for $16,680, and it bounced. And then that's when she switched accounts to the First Community Bank. Okay, so when she switches checks, but like you can see, it gets a lot worse. This is First Community. Okay. I have one of those for the other two, but this is city. So here on that, you got a lot of stuff that could be normal, but you just didn't know, because the reality to this is here's a Dick's Clothing and Sporting Goods for $307, $254. All of those seem kind of normal. right? And deposits going in look kind of normal.
That could be one shoe now. Like, it's so expensive.
But kind of at the kickoff of what I found when it started is that on 12/21 was that Parker compound bow.
Mm.
So that's December of 18 when she done that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really kind of the kicker when the money started to get off track. Because if you see in here at the beginning of this, there's almost a $5,000 balance.
Mm.
So up until that point, when you go down through here and you look at this, here's Elevation Sports for $2,099. There's nothing other than, which is the purchase was for coolers.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So, but
she's shopping local.
Yeah, there was no raffle, right? But as you've probably heard and been told by others, that those coolers were being sold because she was a dealer at a wholesale price. And I never understood the theory in that, especially not saving money. I mean, you'll have to stop me if I go to say something on here that I shouldn't.
No, yeah, keep going. I haven't heard anything.
But like, I went and talked to the guy at Elevation. I mean, he's a great guy. Seems like a really good guy.
Oh yeah, they're doing really big things. They moved in a new building and
So I mean, he seems like a really great guy. And I went in there and talked to him, and he told me, I said, hey, I was going to see if you could look up this purchase for me that was made by the Youth Baseball League. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, it has to do with this. And he's like, oh yeah, I remember that. And I was like, what do you mean? I mean, what made that stand out to you? I said, who was it? He said, it was her that made the purchase. And I was like, well, what do you remember about it? He said, I remember. He said, because my son was going to sell her those coolers. And he said, he came upstairs and got me, and he's like, hey, I'm going to sell her these coolers today. You going to come down here. She's going to buy a lot of coolers. We give her a discount. And he said, okay. So he goes down there and he said, hey, you're going to buy all these coolers. We'll give you a discount. And he said, she got totally sideways with him. Told him she didn't need his discount. That's what he told me. So said she didn't need his discount, and she scoffed at the idea of paying this discount. And she's paying for this money out of which that's completely relevant, right? I mean, naturally, if anybody there on that board knew that they could have got those coolers at a discount for a raffle, they'd have took that discount right now. So
that's really nice of them.
And then she goes around, and everything would indicate that she's just selling these coolers off for even less than what she paid for. So to me, I don't necessarily see a monetary gain there other than just washing up money, but it's a play on status, right? Hey, I can hook you up with this, and we can do this, and this is how good we're doing. Here we go. It's just another prong in the process of tying into that, right?
The more people she makes happy, the less likely they are to report her for certain things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as you go on through it, I have to look around that microphone, but when I was looking for the the football.
Is there something these highlighted sections stand for, or like say orange?
Yeah, the orange is stuff that's questionable.
Oh, nice. Okay,
and
so that's why it's half orange.
Yeah, and well, I take that back. The orange is stuff that's ultimately wasn't. It was questionable, and then on the next one, there's stuff that's in red that goes through to tell what was not any good. Like, I put it as questionable because naturally I can't necessarily say that they didn't, when they made an ATM withdrawal for $500, that wasn't something legitimate, but there's no track to it. So ultimately, if there's no track to it, then she might as well have just taken the cash because there's no evidence and you can't do that. Right?
I'm sure she's buying the baseball team popsicles, James. Come on now. But okay, so that makes sense. So for instance, the TurboTax would be questionable.
Yeah.
You just couldn't prove exactly what it was being purchased for.
Well, what I did is when I handed this over, I gave this to I'm trying to find my right one here. When I gave this to the police, state troopers, I handed it all over just like this. So they knew where it was and what it was and all those different things. And then see, here's like I even have the, you can look at this if you want, but it's the bank account and it shows who the signers are.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let me see that. Let me get that real quick. All right. Thank you, sir. I'm becoming a professional document skimmer.
Hey,
lately.
wait a minute. Before you do that,
Yep.
let me see it real quick.
Oh, yep, sure. I won't read any names, but I am curious.
Don't show that.
Okay, yeah, you won't be able to see it. Yeah, it's not on camera. Okay, so
that shows who the two signers were that had access to the account, because I confirmed that.
And are these public documents? Like, can people, if someone's listening and they want to know all the names, because I'm not saying names on the air of people who didn't get charged.
No,
I just don't feel right about doing that. But are these only with you, or
yes?
Okay, gotcha.
And for me to get access to that, they had to put me on the board.
Okay, so you was on the youth baseball board.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had to be put onto the board to get access to those bank statements and that stuff.
And can we say who the investigator was or is
on that?
Yeah. The as far as the state police, they were working on it, right? Or was it?
They were working on that. When I handed it over to Trooper Marsh and to Trooper Booth.
Gotcha. Okay.
And
so they have all this stuff.
Yes.
Too. Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
So if I can get to the city bank statements here, we'll be in business.
And to clarify, so the Citibank was before First Community? She transferred the baseball account to First Community Bank? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I'm just making sure.
Yeah, because First Community starts on 4/30/2019 and
cool.
runs on through. So I'm trying to get this stuff. I should have had it in order.
Oh, you're fine. No. Well, I guess, after you walked through everything, did you personally find anything like charge wise? Did you say like, oh, well, there's like 12 charges here that I'm counting?
Oh, yeah. It totaled. I mean, like, yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to the highlighted one so I can tell you exactly what it is. And then there was another one here that come in under, like this is on January 22nd of 2019. Okay. So you've got more purchase of Yeti coolers on the 28th. Then you've got on 122, you got Olive Garden, and then you've got a ATM withdrawal for $280 on the 22nd. You've got on 128 the season ticket purchase of the WVU athletic baseball season tickets.
How much was that one for?
That one was for $528.00.
So that's probably a few tickets, maybe. I don't know what baseball runs.
I think it would be at least two.
Yeah, be at least two. I would think.
Then on 128. There was one purchase to Amazon. And then on February the 8th, there's two more purchases to Amazon. Okay. So here's what's a little bit strange. So when I turned this over to him, naturally, as a private investigator, I don't have the capacity to subpoena something. So, unless it's through an attorney, and the attorney subpoenas it. So, which that wasn't the case in this. But when I handed this over, I gave it to him, and what I could find out for sure was through the accounts was on 2/8/19. Okay. There was a purchase, and this is when it hit the card. Okay. So it could have been could have been a day or two prior. You know what I mean? Something like that. But
Sure.
$525. Okay. There's a $525 purchase and 96 cents to Amazon that is classified as outdoor recreational. It's questionable, right? So, I mean, to my knowledge, there was nothing ever at that time, according to talking to people, that would have been purchased at that time that would have fit into that they would have needed.
Yeah.
Right? So, but here's the one that gets questionable. Also showing up on February the 8th of 2019 for $914.94 is an Amazon purchase classified as lab and science equipment, which was strange to me because there shouldn't have been anything that I could think of after talking to them that would have classified under lab and science equipment for $914 that would have been needed by the youth baseball.
That's some Walter White vibes. You watch Breaking Bad?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, then,
she had cancer. So, all right, but go ahead.
So here's and on that, in that same stroke right there, this is right after he's deceased. Okay. February the 19th, TJ Maxx in Beckley, $357.34. I mean, we know that's not, there's nothing that.
It's a table.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And after he's deceased, which I mean, like, there's talk about the trailer that was purchased and stuff for the middle school and stuff. So there's no doubt he knew that they were buying things for the middle school. He just didn't, for the football and stuff, he didn't know where it was coming from.
Yeah,
but
well, he didn't know the money in his account, what was in his account. Because the utility bill was getting shut off.
Yeah.
So how's he going to know what's in this account?
Exactly. So February the 19th, shortly after he's deceased, here's the totals on the football equipment that was purchased for the middle school. And it was broke down into several purchases on the card. Okay, is what it looks like. The first one to RAE Crowther's, what it is. Company.
Let me look this up.
So I think they're out of North Carolina, South Carolina.
Crowther. Okay. Wait, what am I doing? Football and strength training equipment?
Yep.
Okay, I got it here. Look at that. I'm like Jamie and Joe in the Rogan studio. All right. So we got, it looks like varsity Patriot racks. So you got gym racks. You got like the hit machine that the linemen hit and they, push their coach across the field. I have no clue what I'm saying. They got this thing that looks like you just flip it over. It's called a hammer and get some strength training. So it's obvious it's strength training equipment.
Yeah. It's my impression that it was sleds.
Sleds. Okay.
Those
yeah,
sleds.
you mentioned that.
Yeah. And
okay, so is this a sled,
yeah.
this thing? Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So that was that one went through on February 19th, 2019.
How much was that for?
That was for $2,000.
Okay.
Then there's another one that went through, different transaction number, for $2,000 on 2019. Okay, totaling $4,000 in that one day. And then on February 21st, there's another $2,000, totaling $6,000. And then on the 22nd, the next day, there is another one that goes through to RAE Crowther for $1,090. So it was $7,090.
Gotcha. And the sleds, so I found these sleds. Maybe she bought like 10 of these. It's like,
no, that's just a little pull behind sled. That's
okay, so it's a different one. Okay.
Yeah, it's that first one you saw.
Well, that first one was like $5,000, which I mean, inflation.
Well, no, they're pretty expensive.
Yeah. So now it's $4,800. It says.
Yeah. So I'm sure that I don't know that it was all sleds. I just know that there was sleds.
Okay.
In it. So they may have bought some smaller stuff to go with it too. I don't know, but
gotcha.
From the way they talked, it was at the place when I called them. It was the majority of the cost was the sleds.
No Mexican antibiotics for the middle school kids.
That's
probably not. Yeah, that's not legal.
So, but you when you go through here, there's a check, okay, which is in here. We can go through and look at it. But then there's a check wrote out for 1042, which would be in the one with the highlighted ending for $6,570. I think I may have verified that one. I think that may have been the league fee. Maybe. We'll look at it in a second.
So do they pay into a greater league, like a travel league, or
yeah, they paid Epling. Every team paid Epling Stadium to play there based on the amount of kids that they had and stuff like that. So,
gotcha.
And it could be upwards in the thousands of dollars to play.
Sure.
I mean, depending on how many kids you had.
Yeah, it's a lot of maintenance, a lot of grass to cut, a lot of, power bill.
So, and that goes through all of, all the way up from before he died, Mike died, all the way until at least
3 months after, you said.
Well, it goes on, and this is just the city account, and it ends right about the time that this is done, and she switches the account.
Gotcha. Okay.
So right around April. So because at this point in time, when this one ends, that's when she makes that deposit, and that check bounces.
So, and you mentioned, so all that tallied up to around 60 grand of questionable things.
Well,
and the 32 from bingo, that was part of that.
No, with the 32, it wasn't 32 that the league lost. It was only like 16-6, whatever it was there, because half of that went to the volleyball team. And to everything that I could find, the volleyball team got their half. I mean, there's all kinds of rumors out there to how that was acquired back, but they got their half back. Is my understanding.
Good deal. And the other half is
it's gone. Yeah, it was gone. The closest they got to getting it back was a worthless check. So that was it.
So obviously there's things in here that they knew was fraudulently purchased, like the bow. I mean, we know the Hamiltons had to give it back. Well, they didn't have to, but they weren't going to keep it.
Right.
So it's evident she was misusing baseball funds. Now, as to how much of that, probably most of it, I'm not sure, but
it's important to remember that there's what I could tag to her that was actual money lost. Okay. I'm counting actual money lost is about 20 to 25. That's actual money. Yes.
Okay.
Actual money lost that should have been here. Okay.
That you can say Natalie bought this.
Yes.
Okay.
And that it went out to this. Now, I can't say what she did with these $500 withdrawals to that. And I can't say what she did with this crowdfunder money. But everything my investigation leads me to find is it was nothing to anything that would have been what I would call legal under the guidelines as a purchase. Right. So when you get into that, the bigger it gets bumped up because, and I think it was for status purpose, is she would take and write checks into here, and we can go through that, but for $10,000 from TSG, whatever it was, and then just spend it right back out.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's where it was just from right about when it started with that bow, she just started because they had, like I said, I showed you right there, about almost $5,000 in there when it started. And that bow was the first marker purchase that when you can really tell this really started. And that was in December before he died.
So was there checks wrote to their business or checks wrote from their business?
Both.
To the league. Oh, there's both. So they wrote checks to their business.
Yes. But here's the thing, especially under one part of it in the concept is, like in particular in here, when they write checks back, like there was supposed to be shirts made, like memorial T-shirts for Mike. Most of the people that I talked to paid for them, never got them.
Oh, really?
And then, there was that money was like, here's the thing. If you're going to purchase memorial T-shirts for Mike, okay,
She sold memorial T-shirts and then didn't give the T-shirts.
That's from everybody that I talked to. So when you're looking at this, why would you ever on any level anyway, if you're a business owner and you're donating money to the program and the program's actually going to pay for the T-shirts with the money that it took in, why would you just not write the check to the T-shirt place or pay the T-shirt place? Why would you write the checks back to the company and then the money disappear? And it's quite a bit of money for T-shirts.
I mean,
look at it right here, but it's in the thousands of dollars.
So in the laws of the league, I mean, that's not legal, correct? According to the laws, you can't write a check to your own business.
I mean, you could get...
Unless, like, you could say, like, well, this is reimbursement. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, that still wouldn't make it right.
Sure.
But it wouldn't necessarily hang you over it, right?
So, it wouldn't make sense to do it that way.
Right, because nobody's going to want to do that, because why would you wash that back through your books, right? I mean, you're just going to have to show you took in this $1,500 or $2,000, whatever it is, and then you're going to turn right back around and write this check out back to this guy. Why would you just not write the check to the guy that's doing the T-shirts unless you're making money off of it or something like that? There has to be a motive for it.
You had like a few $100s in your account and you needed to make a big purchase. So you use the youth funds until you can build your stacks back up and then you put it back, or some type of laundering.
Well, she definitely kited the money around too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know if you're familiar with what that means.
Well, I have no clue.
So like, I mean, you kite a check. It's just like you can take a check from one bank account you got, write it to another. And by the time it clears there, you're catching up to it. Right. So
you're kind of playing with the 2 days it takes to cash the thing, which I think it works a little more instant now with a lot of banks, but thank goodness. But okay, that makes sense. So it's like a pyramid scheme within a pyramid scheme. Right. It's like you're just trying to play a shell game.
Right. And I think at the end, as she got more desperate for money, you can clearly see she spent more money out of here, but it was really kind of ridiculous stuff.
All bank accounts on deck. It's like, where can I pull from next? My grandma, there's some texts in there from someone named Uncle Buster. I don't know yet.
Yeah.
But everywhere. And it's disgusting. So you mentioned, I want to clarify. So we know of the $16,000 that bounced. Did she actually put money back that didn't bounce? You said she did, right?
Not $16,000. When she moved bank accounts, she started with, I think, a $600 deposit was all. Yeah, right there. $600 deposit. She opened the account at First Community. Yeah, $600 deposit. That's what she opened that up with.
Well, let me ask you this.
And she should have had $16,000. She should have had $16,000 right at $600 at least to make that deposit, because that's all right about this time.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, that set off all kind of triggers when that $16,000 check bounced.
Oh yeah. Well, there's an email that I'll eventually release, but it's some correspondence amongst a bank, and they're like, yep, this one bounced again. Surprise, surprise, to that effect. And I'm like, so all these people are just having these little background conversations until literally all of the manure truck hits the fan.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So in your opinion, what is above a misdemeanor if you steal money? Because that's pretty much what this sounds like. Is there a certain dollar amount? Like, would it be one charge that you saw, or would each purchase be a separate charge if there was potentially to be charges brought in this?
Generally, they're going to link them together. I mean, if it's all a part of the same, scheme, they're not going to, it's embezzlement, basically. And I mean, it's definitely 100% in the felony category. I mean, it's going to be over into
what is that, over $600 or something like that?
It's either $999 or $1,000 unless it's changed, but it's so anything over $1,000. But they're gonna try to link them together. I mean, just like serial shoplifter. I've seen where if a person goes in and shoplifts, and the same person, they can either get them right then, but if it's a person that continually comes in over a period of a couple of weeks and they steal 4 or 5 chainsaws or TVs or whatever,
man, that's pretty intense.
They're going to hold that, and it happens right here. So I mean,
that's a chainsaw in my pants. I forgot that was there.
So sorry. I mean, it's they're going to try to link them together, and in a case like this, they're not going to individually, because it was all a part of the same scheme. So they're all going to link it together, and it's definitely going to be a felony level for that.
Well, I feel for the sports parents, because it's kind of like this whole thing was overshadowed. I made a mistake. I thought early on, I was like, oh, the same investigators that was on the murder was on this, but it's not the case.
No.
So why, why do you think, which I haven't reached out to anyone about this, the state police may have a reasonable explanation. I have, I hope to talk to them eventually, but I'm just curious why no charges were ever brought up in this particular instance. Well,
I mean, it's kind of like, I get their stance. It's kind of like when I don't know exactly, and I couldn't attest to when exactly Bob and them found this and started doing that. But I mean, I think that they did a great job on putting it together.
Oh yeah.
And I think that, so I don't know what exact time frame we crossed. You get what I'm saying? Like when I started versus when they started and how it overlapped. Cause I never talked to Bob or Bledsoe. So it was, I was dealing with the other two. So I don't know exactly at what time we crossed, but I think that in this, I could see where this could muddy up the decision as far as why do you need it if it's not going to do any good, because nobody's ever going to she's never going to pay back. In reality, I can't imagine she's ever going to pay back the restitution on the federal crime.
$25 a month, James. And that's going to take 8,333 years or something.
Yeah.
I added it up. If they don't even add interest. So, I mean, I'm sorry, laugh disclaimer. I mean, it's awful, but she ain't paying anything.
So technically
And sorry, I can hear that paper clip. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Technically you're getting into, is it worth it? And is it worth it to muddy the water? I mean, I've worked on a lot of cases where if you give them too many decisions, it can cloud things up, right? So picking juries, I mean, and it's kind of one of those things to where when you're picking a jury, you're going to take the path of least resistance and get it to them in the easiest manner. I think that this would have been beneficial from one real aspect, which ultimately they didn't need in the end.
She's stealing from kids.
Is, well, that and the fact that there's no denying she paid for this. There's no, he knew, there's none of this. I know in most of these cases that she made the purchase. And in my opinion, if I can put her on the majority of them, I never found anything where he made one, or it would indicate that Mike actually made one of these purchases.
Mm. Yeah. Can we roll up in Hazleton with like a citizen's arrest and like,
add to her sentence?
We got the truth. Like, let's bring charges.
Yeah.
Oh God, man. See, which, just taking a guess, let's say Heinzman and Bledsoe was thinking like they're worried about a murder and the $2.5 million. Like, so I get it. Like, obviously in the world, that's more than important. Where I'll kind of want some understanding is there's people that like over this youth sports stuff spent 1.5 years of like going through audits and all kinds of different things like that I think are still obviously very hurt.
No, that's the football.
Oh, that's the football.
That's the football team.
Okay. So that's a whole separate thing. So no one was audited over the baseball situation? Okay.
They froze the bank account, but no, there was nobody was ever audited.
Because I know the football one is a little more complicated. You know, people were thrown off the board and like the financial audits and all this stuff was going on. So this one was more like Natalie's spending all the money and I can prove it. But, you know. Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, because it was in the beginning when I was talking to him, you know, it was like, hey, this is great. And I turned over this and amongst several other things, including recordings and stuff like that. But
sure.
And it was all about it. And then this come about with the murder and everything else. And this kind of took which naturally,
I mean, yeah,
you can't argue with that. Cause I mean, it's if you really read the evidence and stuff, and I think that's where I think you've done a good job of putting it out there where people can understand it, because I think some people get parts of the story, so they make assumptions and they don't, and they're still going to do that.
Armchair
even if you lay it all out in front of them, they're still going to do that. But the reality is, you know, I would advise people to say, I can understand when people say, how could this guy not know? But then when they lay it out right in front of you, there's no way to deny that. So, I mean, it's like, it's all right there. It's clear in the text. It's clear she's communicating with everybody. In what I have, when the $16,000 check bounced, the correspondence came from her through the channels.
She just poor little housewife.
Exactly. I've took care of this. That's already taken care of. Don't worry about it. I got the text where she says it. So it's like she can't deny it. And I think that's where this would have been beneficial. But in reality, is that part of it? I guess hindsight, if something would have happened that people wouldn't have understood it, this would have been really beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with the way that they put it together, I think it was clearly clear cut enough to where they didn't really need to add this into the mix to have to explain it and keep those people there longer. Because I mean, as you can see this and imagine, this could have added a substantial amount of time to both sides to discuss this if they'd have done this.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you know, it's just so cut and dry. It depresses me that they didn't avenge the children. You know, it's like, my goodness, making memorial t-shirts. If anyone has one of those memorial t-shirts out there, please comment below. But so far, it's pretty evident to me that like she's not, along with the scholarships too, which was a memorial scholarship, is pushing merch that didn't exist. So that's
and
disgusting.
There was not only that one, but one you're probably, and we're going, like you said, we're sticking to not naming people that.
Sure, yeah. Well, what's the statute of limitations on this? Is it over? Like, is it not possible to charge?
To my knowledge, no. To my knowledge, if it's over the felony amount, if it's a felony, there's no statute of limitations in it.
Let's go.
So, but like, I'm trying to get to the checks here, but I'm sorry. When you get to this, there's more articles of clothing that are purchased to the tune of probably somewhere around $3,000 to $4,000 to a certain company. That people that I've text messages, the people that I talked to, they didn't get that either.
LuLaRoe, like the pants. You know LuLaRoe?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. No. That's it's like the leggings. It's all kinds of different patterns of leggings that they eventually found like molded in a big warehouse. Anyway.
No, this is
they would sling it on Facebook Live. You wouldn't see them people like, girl, look at this tiger print, girl. Yeah, we got $45 for this. Who wants it? You know, they do these Facebook Lives where these people would just get on and like ravage these leggings. I can't believe you didn't know about that. But it's a whole thing. And there's a Lululemon, and I don't know.
I've heard of Lululemon. Don't she do like ain't that like hair bows or something for girls?
That sounds right.
Girls, that's what I want to say. That's why I know the name.
That sounds right.
Naturally, I don't wear hair bows, but
I mean, you should. Yeah, you'd wear it well, James.
Trying to find that here, but it was.
Take your time.
It was two, which you can guess. which we can look at, but
yeah, listen, I'm the state police's biggest fan. If anyone out there is listening and they're like, hey, I want to bring charges up on this lady. She's eating too many Doritos during the day. That commissary needs to go to the children. I'm going to get her charged. I mean, even though it'll be, $17 a year she'll pay back, but even still.
Cause here's another thing too, is that don't get mentioned. Here's the checks. That's one of them. The other one's probably on down in there. But.
Yeah, to put it in perspective for the podcast audience, James has a stack of like Lord of the Rings level novel length of just baseball receipts and such, bank account statements and all kinds of good stuff.
So this was for shirts and hoodies. I talked to numerous people that should have received said shirts and hoodies that claimed that they never got them. And this one invoice is for $1,980. And like when this happens, there should be like, if they collect money from parents, like there's a lot of stuff in here. And I mean, without laying everything out, it's hard to do it in perspective, and explain it where people can visualize it. But there should be an intake on that. You know what I mean? Either from a fundraiser or from payments from parents. And then the money should be paid out, right? That happens sometimes, and there's not, it doesn't correspond like correct, back and forth with what actually gets paid. Because when I first went in here, naturally I acquired, hey, what are your normal expenses? What do you, through a regular year, what do you normally spend? Okay. So
a budget.
Right. So, and there's uniforms, league fee. If they buy warm-ups or sweatshirts, baseballs.
Big League Chew, maybe.
Right. So stuff like that. And what was really bad is a lot of people pitched into this program too. And like one thing that I think is important to mention, but I'm not going to mention their name, is that, and not because they did something bad, but when I went through this, excuse me, I also found out that at the current time when all this went south and the bank account was frozen, and I have that ticket, there was about a $4,500 invoice out for uniforms to Spartans that needed to be paid.
Okay.
And there was no money. No money. So one of the individuals who had already been victimized in this situation paid that money and coughed up that $4,500 by themselves and covered this money.
That was named as an investor?
Yes.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah.
I could take a guess. I won't, but that's...
And I will tell you that it's probably not who you would... In that situation, it's probably not... Although that individual was worried about it. And...
They were just trying to help.
I think that he was... Well, I mean, naturally, who I'm talking about as far as that. The other person that actually paid it, I'm not going to mention their name. Because
sure.
But naturally... Chris was going to pony up and pay this money. Okay. And this other person said, no, I'm going to take care of this. You've already done all this. You're doing this and this and this. And he was at the time, but this other person said, no, let me pay it.
Oh.
And she paid it.
Yeah.
So it was,
it wasn't Natalie.
No, it wasn't Natalie.
I'm making sure you said she, so.
And, but she ponied up and volunteered to pay it. So these parents didn't, and we couldn't, you couldn't really ask the parents back for that money because they had technically already paid it, and it wouldn't be right to do that. And it was a bad situation all the way around. And you're wondering how these kids are going to get a play, how they're going to do all this stuff. And these people, she just took the money from these people right out from underneath them.
From children, dude.
Oh yeah, it's horrible.
I mean, but like, elderly, she doesn't discriminate. It's like if you're old, if you're young, you got cancer, you don't have cancer, we'll take advantage of you however we possibly can. God, that sucks.
I mean, it's because a lot of people, I don't want to beat a dead horse because I think everybody around knows the kind of person that Chris Davis is. But I think to a lot of extent, I don't think some people really just don't know what he actually gave to that, just to that program. I mean, besides the community and all that, but just to that program, and like he paid for that, the facility down there, which now is, his nephew, Eric. I don't know if you know him.
Oh yeah.
Eric Davis, One True King, does the training lessons down there in the facility and stuff.
Right.
He's he does that down there now, but back then Chris was paying, like the heating bill. I've been through all this stuff. Just the heating bill down there to keep those kids practicing all winter long in that building was astronomical.
Dude, I could imagine. How big's the facility?
There was 2 facilities and he had them both running so they could practice in both. It's 2 big warehouses. It's thousands of square feet in both. And just the heating bill down there alone was, for the winter would be well over 15 grand. That's not the other utilities. That's just the gas to keep them warm.
Yep.
And he covered all of that, everything.
Wow.
And never asked anything of anybody. But that's the kind of guy he is.
And that's the ripple effects too. People aren't realizing, and that's why I would love to have a town hall and fill it with people that, how did Michael not know people? Now I get if you're just coming in, you don't know anything. That's one of the early questions you ask. But I'd love to have a town hall and just, walk through. Okay, well, here's why. And then, have my little explainer and whiteboard. And then we have these little pieces of paper and the string leading to different things. But it's stuff like that too, is like, these were just really down to earth, good people.
Well, I think a lot of people, it's just like anything else. A lot of guys want to sit back and say, especially guys in that realm, and they want to be like, I never trust my wife that much.
3 times divorced.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So you're sitting here and you're like, yeah. And it's just like, I'm not going to say that question didn't cross my mind too.
Sure.
But if you open your eyes and look at this, it's obvious in the beginning, but as you look at this, it's clearly obvious. And I started to get that picture because naturally I can't, just like any investigator should do, when you go in and look at something, I can't go in here, get these papers and in my mind say, he had nothing to do with this, right? You got to stay unbiased until you get the facts.
Sure.
And I wholeheartedly would testify to the fact now of seeing what I've seen and knowing what I've seen throughout the trial and different things like that and other things that I've seen. I would easily believe 100% that he did not know. He did not know the actions that are indicated in this, that he had nothing to do with it. He didn't know about it. It went on after him. There's no reason to carry that on.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I don't, if that be the case, even if you was the battered wife or you was forced into doing something at the point when it was over and you got lucky and he just naturally died, you'd be like, thank God now I can tell everybody what he was doing to me, not continue it on to the fashion that is, there's 100% evidence to prove that.
Oh yeah. Texting her mom, like while he's in ICU, like, hey, I got this deal. I got all these sutures,
Yeah.
Or whatever. It's just so disgusting.
That's cold-blooded, ain't it?
Dude, that's bananas. Yeah. That's like Hannibal Lecter level sick. Like seriously. But yeah, that's just, she's just a wrecking ball, dude. Like not the Miley Cyrus, kind of harmful version. Like she's the one that'll kill you and your entire family if it'll make her $20, you know what I mean? But so and to close it off, you're confident, are there individuals that would be all about testifying in court to this stuff? And like get on the stand and be like, listen, I'm without a doubt, all these transactions where Natalie had added up to this much money, 25,000, I think she said it was.
Yeah.
So you do that no problem.
Yeah. Because, too, like I said, when I handed this over, we gave them the information. Now, some of this I didn't have access to get, but the proof is there because, like, even all these ATM withdrawals. Now, I don't know that the state police don't have it already because they had told me that they were going to subpoena, especially like the Amazon receipts and stuff like that. Because Amazon, even as a member, wouldn't cough up those receipts.
Right.
So to show exactly what was purchased. Okay. But in the ATM withdrawals, I believe clearly, especially after the fact, is there a possibility that some of those transactions could have not been heard, like the ATM withdrawals? Is there a possibility of that? I can't sit here and say that. But when I handed this over to them, if they wanted to do that, they clearly could have gotten the ATM cameras, and they may already have.
Sure.
So, but beyond the shadow of a doubt, there were thousands of dollars taken out of here at a minimum, well over $10,000-$15,000 that was taken out of here that was 100% her.
It's good to know. And I think I think your muddy theory is a thing. Like, it was just there's so many ins and outs of just the Ponzi scheme and the murder that this would have been another fork.
Yeah.
Of like, okay, well, now we got to take you down this road, you know? So now, granted, I know that they had the Ponzi scheme first, then they had the murder. Well, now, state police, let's go. Let's get this baseball league trial going if we can. I mean, now, granted, they may reach out. I'll probably reach out and just see if they have a comment or something. They may have an explanation as to why, but I like your muddiness theory.
I think
makes sense.
If I had to speculate, I would say that you got to look at it from two perspectives. Is if you take it, there is no doubt in my mind that you would win, but the reality is at what cost at the taxpayer's expense.
Right. Like, what does it do in the grand scheme of life?
Right.
When she's paying $25 a month. Now, granted, it would be good closure for people involved.
I agree with that.
That was, that had kids in the league, and obviously that stuff's important. It's just such a mess, such a devastating mess. And $25,000. Now, granted, it's a ton of money, especially for West Virginians. I mean, that's a lot of people's salary for the year.
Oh yeah.
But $2.5 million. And then a murder, and then it's kind of like, it kind of, I understand, but I understand all sides. All right, so there's that. Let's climb out of Natalie Cochran's web, we'll say. And you told me about a case involving the ice cream man. And I know I purposely didn't look any of this up. So what is that for someone who doesn't know? And I guess this was local in the area.
Yeah.
What happened?
Al Jessup was known as the ice cream man in Beckley for years, even back when I was a kid, and he sold ice cream out of a rolly cart at the New River Pool, and he'd walk around through town. I mean, like, he was a public icon of sorts. Mm-hmm. Okay, just a older guy, and yeah, that's him.
Okay, yeah, I got him up on the screen here.
So what happens is, I was actually working over at the, and I worked on this is back when I first started doing that kind of work, working on and off with some of the guys on the task force, stuff like that, when I was at Beckley. And some of the guys were there talking about, they had got a call that some of his neighbors was complaining that he was pointing cameras in their kids' bathrooms, bedrooms.
Jesus.
Okay. So everybody's kind of talking about it, and, everybody didn't, it's a different kind of mindset to have when you're looking at that stuff, and certain things may seem suspicious, and then certain things you kind of blow off in the scheme of things if you don't do it. And we're all talking about it, and I'm like, man, what's the deal with, this? So I just kind of for some reason threw a red flag to me. So
sure,
I called the neighbors, started talking to all the neighbors and everything else, and it's like, yeah, well, this and this and this, and about what he'd been doing with the cameras, and goes on, and I called his landlord. So, and this gets kind of crazy, just so you know.
I'm down. Crazy is my middle name.
What happens is I call the landlord. Landlord says that she had just recently kicked him out. And I'm like, well, doesn't mean no good. I can't go in his house if, just because you kicked him out, I can't go in there and go through his stuff still. There's stuff still in there. And I was like, but you the landlord. I don't know what kind of agreement you got. All I know is if you report a crime to me that there's something that you've got reason to go in there, or you're able to go in there and you see something, then you call me, and then, we'll see what we can do. And so I guess they worked that out. He didn't come back for stuff, and like he's supposed to, all that different stuff. And ultimately, I guess they went in the house. Okay. So they went in the house, and the lady calls me, and she's like, I'm not going to mention her name, but she's like, oh my gosh, there's this and this and this. You need to come and do this. I was like, well, I can't come in there until I get a search warrant. So I need you to tell me what you saw. You're going to have to write me a statement. You're going to have to do all this stuff and everything else. So she does. She writes me a statement, gives me all that stuff. Ultimately, I get a search warrant for the house and everything, get it signed off on, and a serve a search warrant on the house. He's, of course, not there. And because I really, at that point in the moment, I didn't really know where he was at that point in time. But she had kicked him out, and he was gone, is all I know. So we go in, serve a search warrant on the house, and I walk in this house. Okay. And I'm just trying to keep it to where I don't mention anything that would be.
I got you.
But so I walk in the house, walk in the front door. Technically, probably if you Googled it right there, you probably see the house. But I walk through the front door of this house, and instantaneously I look over, and there's kids' toys sticking out from behind the couch. And there is a door which would give the indication that it was like a bedroom door or something that has an exterior latch and padlock on it.
That's my nightmare.
Okay. So when I walk in, I see this lock on the door. I have no key. We ultimately just pried it off, and we go in, and I kid you not, there is a army bunk, a stripper pole,
Oh my God,
and an ice cream freezer, and a chair, kind of like a sort of like a little fancy chair, not like one of these desk chairs, but sort of like rounded, and got it, and it's covered in plastic.
Oh no.
Taped off, covered in plastic. And in the corner, there is a camera system, which is feeding all the exterior cameras of the house, and also cameras that are stationed in that room all the way around.
Jeez.
And there's about, I think it was, don't quote me on this, but it was right at 600 VHS tapes in the corner. 600 VHS tapes.
Was these like branded tapes, or was it like home tapes, or
it was home tapes?
Oh my God.
600 and some home VHS tapes. So what happens is, naturally, I mean, he's not there. He's not going to tell me what's on those tapes, but based on the room, I mean, the assumptions are insane at that point.
It's like that movie 7 or something.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus.
So what's happening is he gets, I've served the search warrant. I collect all this, and I have to watch all 600 of those VHS tapes to see what's on them. And all 600 of those tapes were just porn. Now I have to explain that. So what would happen is he had a huge satellite, okay, out back, and didn't know if it functioned or not at the time. But according to the time on the tapes and stuff, it did function back then. And so what happens is I'm literally I was in there for a week watching porn.
Goodness
in the police
gracious.
department. Because what would happen is you put it in there and you did. And I'm like, this is not going to do any good. This is not going to help me any. Okay. So what happens is, though, what he would do is those tapes were recording what was going on in that room. Okay. And other things that he was getting through that satellite somehow. Okay. Which was images of young girls, like kids in erotic outfits, stuff like that, like CP, right?
Jesus.
So, but here's the kicker though. Like he would record over it. Like whatever he would have on there from the cameras and what he would have on there for a while on the thing, he would run over it and just let the VCR record over that tape with regular porn from the satellite. Okay. But he screwed up because what would happen is, I guess it would stop or something would happen. So in between each porn recording, like for anywhere from like a flash point to a minute or two, or even longer in some cases where he just screwed up and missed it, there was videos and snippets of that child CP and then of what was actually occurring in that room.
Right.
Okay. Now, what would happen in the room, I won't get into a whole lot of detail on that.
No, yeah. I mean, I'm going to put a warning at the beginning of this. So, whatever you want to lay out, I'm good with. Whatever you don't want to lay out, I'm good with too. But yeah, for sure.
So what happens is, as I'm watching these, the videos in the room were all of girls that appeared to be 18. Okay.
Right.
But if they were 18, some of them weren't 18 for long. Okay. And there had to have been, based on the interactions, there had to have been certain interactions that transpired that were built over a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because some of these girls were coming there and he would pay them, and not like it wasn't like necessarily, it was strange because it wasn't necessarily like in the conventional sense of like a prostitute, right? Guy goes, picks up a prostitute, they go do their thing and they roll on. You know what I mean? This was different than that. They had a relationship to a certain point. Okay. So to skip back, just to throw this in there so everybody understands this going in, I go back through his history before I even bring him in. And back in the late 70s, early 80s, he was investigated by Beckley PD detectives for actually physically touching a young girl, but they couldn't find enough to convict him. So he was accused of it, but he was never prosecuted for it. And I actually went back and tried to talk to the detectives. One of them, I think, was still alive and done that. And then he was like, just never could get enough to charge him. And they didn't. But he would these girls would come in the room. Okay. I mean, the CP from the satellite speaks for itself. They were all clearly underage girls. And then there's the question of having the toys in the house. I checked, he had there was no reasoning behind that to have that. Right. Yeah. So, and he's out here selling ice cream to kids.
Jesus.
So what happens is I start reviewing these tapes and it's strange, man. Like it's some stuff right out of a horror movie. Like I will tell you this, and it's not funny, but it's just strange. But like, he's got that freezer in there. By the way, that freezer in there is where he keeps the ice cream.
So he'd start. Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
He'd stack the truck with the ice cream in the freezer.
Yeah. So, and that ain't even the best part. We'll get to that here.
Did he have like the truck that went?
No, he had the pushy cart that had the bell on it, and so he literally took it out of that freezer and put it in there. But I will tell you this, and that gets to the ending of the story. But I'm not going to skip to it. But just to tell you this, there were numerous times when he stocked that truck, he didn't take the ice cream out of the freezer and put it in the cart. He took the ice cream out of the freezer, set it on the bed, then took it to the cart.
Dude, what is he doing with this ice cream?
So, well, I mean, I'm glad I never ate any of it.
Oh my God.
I just say that. So,
Oh my God.
so as you're going through, and to give you an idea of one scene in this, how weird it was. Okay, there was an instance, if you look it up on here, where he got jumped in Beckley. Okay,
Can we give these people a medal? Did they know what they were doing?
well, if
Would we say mugged? How would we?
well, that's all you probably have to go down to the older.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll try
It
to.
may be kicked further
While you're
back.
talking, I'll
So,
find
but
it.
just to give you an idea of what happens is, he gets beat up several years before this happens. He gets jumped on the bike trail.
Mhm.
Okay. And the community's in an uproar. Like, this is the ice cream man. You know what I mean?
They're taking up for him.
They jumped on the ice cream man, and everybody's and it's going nuts. I mean, everybody's like, they love this guy. He's the greatest guy ever. He's been selling ice cream up here at the pool since I was a kid.
Those
all this
strawberry
stuff.
shortcake pops are fire. Son.
Yeah. So,
Oh my God.
so as he goes through, he gets jumped, which plays out into the video that he had from the room. Okay. Cause after he got jumped by his own accord in the videos, after he got jumped, his stuff didn't work anymore.
His ice cream.
Yeah. His push-up pop didn't work no more.
Gotcha.
Didn't push up. So,
Okay.
so
That's a good way of putting it.
he's and that's according to his own, because I mean, I watched hours of this stuff. So as it goes through, he and that's because he's telling these girls this. It's crazy, man. Like,
I'm sorry.
it's
That
wild.
was a good joke. I'm sorry.
But when he goes through here, he's telling these girls this stuff, and certain things are going on, and the things that transpire in there. Just to give you a glimpse into one part of it, there's one girl in there. She's sitting on the ice cream freezer. Okay. Naked
Okay.
as can be. And she's kind of sitting there with her leg up like this and one leg straight out. And this ice cream freezer is kind of tall. It's not like your average down here. It's kind of a little bit higher up here. Right. And he's just sitting in this chair, in this plastic chair like this. Okay. And she's up there naked and he's just staring at her. Like, it's weird. And he's just staring at her. And she's got a can of air duster. You know what that does, right?
Yeah.
That air duster. And she's even got like this straw that plugs into it that comes from like here. And she's sitting here kind of like this with her leg up, the other one straight out. And she's got that air duster. And he just out of the blue just says, you probably shouldn't do that. Like that, And she just hits it. And
She's doing the
yeah.
What's it called? Whippets.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
she hits that air duster, and when she does, she freezes like everybody else does. It's the general what happens. And she's like this. And all of a sudden, she just starts to tilt like that. He never moves out of that chair. He just watches her. And she tilts all the way over, completely naked, dumps off the freezer head first, pile drives top head first into the floor, and goes into like knockout phase, right? She's out. she's shaking like that.
Gee, what did he put in that thing?
He just that's what it does. I mean,
really?
It literally just freezes them for a short period of time. And he just looks at her and says, "I told you so." And just watches her, just sits there and watches her till she wakes up. And then she gets up, and then they go on about everything else that transpired.
Now, when people I've been around done whippets, they sound like Satan after. It's like, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, golly, what is going on? I don't know, like, what's wrong with people? Why do we have to do such things? Golly, dude.
Yeah, it's wild. But I mean,
and that's one video.
Yeah, that's just, dude, there was probably 40, 50 at least clips of him in that room with different girls. It wasn't always the same girls. And then he would pay them.
Did y'all find these ladies to make sure they're okay, or did you? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank goodness.
So it was definitely not going to mention who they were.
Sure. Yeah. No. I just making sure, like, this is like, obviously this whole thing is just horrendous, horrific, and the devil, but he didn't ever murder anyone.
No, he didn't murder anyone.
Okay.
But ultimately what happens is so I take him to jail. I mean, you can see where I arrest him on there. There's a video of it.
Okay. Yeah. I'm down for it. Is it on YouTube?
Then, yeah, there's a, well, it might be under just the WVNS.
WVVA.
There's a bunch of them. Somebody made a video and put it up of it. That's a funny video on YouTube.
Right.
But I don't know if the actual videos, they might still be up.
He got involved in a altercation at Southern.
I'm getting to that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't want to spoil. No spoilers. All right. Let's see. Right here. WVNS arrested. Let's see if we got this going on here. Oh, wait, that's what I just went to. Oh, it's not on their website anymore.
Well, the one of me walking him in, if you don't play the audio, but it's just back. It's the video of me walking him in that was done by the news, but somebody overwrote it with the Ice Cream Man song from Van Halen.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we got to look this up. All right, so Al Jessup, Ice Cream Man arrest.
That should get it.
Let's see. Is this it? No, that's not it. Let's put WV. Apparently, a bunch of
might just put Ice Cream Man. I think it comes up.
Okay,
without Al Jessup even.
Okay, there's many of Ice Cream Man that's been busted. That's
since then, ain't they?
That's pretty depressing. I won't slow the story down. I'll look for this while. So you've watched that video. I mean, like, it's pretty well open and shut, right? Or what else do you have to do? Like, what was next?
At that point, I brought him in and tried to talk to him. Naturally, he didn't have anything to say, and he wasn't going to talk. He knew the game, and he didn't say anything. Didn't ask what I'd found, anything like that. I mean, he knew. So basically, what happens is, which leads us up to the thing. After I watch all those videos, I take him to the Southern Regional Jail, and from my understanding and the news as to what exactly happened, he got over there and they had him like kind of in a special taking care of him, right? So because of what he'd done, and I guess the nature and his age.
Yeah, and jail, like jail justice, I guess you call it. Like they detest people who hurt kids, things like this.
And I've seen that working firsthand in the prison, especially state prison.
Yeah.
I mean, so what happens is, my understanding is that he's in his cell, and some younger guy comes up and says, "Hey, you're the Ice Cream Man. I'm so glad to see you, all this stuff, everything else. You shake my hand." And it's my understanding that he stuck his hand out the beanhole door. And when he did, the guy grabbed his arm and racked it down and blew everything from there out.
Lord. I mean, I hate to say it, but I'd like to, give that dude some commissary. But anyway, I mean, obviously we don't promote violence on this podcast, but I understand it.
But he takes, and that messed his arm up. Clearly, but from my understanding, it was pretty bad. So
yeah,
they take him to the hospital, and they find out that he's like got all kinds of stuff wrong, starting with it was my understanding, his teeth, and it was affecting his heart, and he was basically on death's doorknob or doorstep, basically. So they opted not to prosecute him because he was going to be in the hospital for X amount of time.
Hold on. This guy didn't get charged?
Mm-mm. Well, he got charged, but ultimately it fell off after they didn't bring the charges back. So they didn't bring the charges back. So
no.
Yeah. So, but here's what happens though. So like I tell you, and this is that's a sad ending to what I was talking about, the highs and lows. So when you look at it as though I really wasn't happy with that, but I mean, what are you going to do? But at the same time, he really was in bad shape, and he did die. He lived a little bit.
He should have died a felon.
Yeah. So, but what happens is ultimately he comes out when he finally does get out. He is in the hospital for months and months and months. Okay. Trying to, I guess, get him straightened out. And I guess the state's ideal was they didn't want to pay all those hospital. If he was going to die, they didn't want to pay all this. And I kind of understand that part, but at the same time, when he came out,
what if he gets out and kidnaps a kid? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, that's it. So, I mean, but my last ditch effort to ensure that I would at least cut his feet out from underneath him was, I got to thinking, and I'm like, well, if they're not going to charge him, I can't. I mean, there's plenty of stuff there to where
prosecute.
They could have, if they'd have put him in jail for 2 years, he'd have died in there. You know what I mean? So even if they just used being in possession of some of the images, it would have been enough. You know what I mean? To put him in there.
He'd been gone.
So, and especially considering he skated probably based on the latter evidence on the one that they couldn't prove back then, it was difficult. So what I did was I went to the health department because I knew what he was going to do when he got out. He was going to go to his only source of income. So basically what happens is I go to the health department and I said, I need to talk to whoever regulates these carts or these food things. And I said, and I go in there and I talk to the lady, extremely nice lady. She did a great job. I'm not going to mention her name, but she did a great job. In my opinion, she was right there. So I said, listen, and she was skeptical at first. I mean, like I went in and I was like, hey, I can't even begin to tell you this story in like what I'm telling her and like the things that I'm trying to tell her, but she's a lady too, you know? So yeah. I'm like,
it's a little awkward.
Yeah. So I'm like, I don't know how to explain this to you, but I need you. And she's like, I don't know. I said, listen, if you will give me 10 minutes and you will follow me to the police department and you will just let me show you just 2 minutes of video, I promise you'll understand what I'm doing.
He's taking a leak on the freezer. There it is.
And she said, okay. So we got down there and I put it to the points where I needed it to be. And I was like, and I turned it on. And cause at some points in time, I was running like 3 VCRs or 4 at the same time. And I start playing these sections of video from what was transpiring of how one section of a little bit of what's happening on that bed and what he's doing on that bed. And then the ice cream coming out of the freezer, going on that bed, and then going into the cart, then coming back out of the cart, going on the bed, then being stacked in the freezer. And she watched about probably 30 seconds or a minute of it. She said, turn it off. And she said, where is he? And where is the cart? And then we went to him and went to the cart, and which it was exactly where I knew it would be at that point in time. And she stuck stickers all over that cart and told him if he ever put anything or sold anything out of that cart again, she would fine him beyond. And she did that, and he couldn't sell ice cream no more.
Gee.
Out of that, at least the kids, So that was his, that was his forte. So who knows how that.
Hey, you got there. He's like, I'm just putting some more cookie dough in here for the kids, Yeah. And you're like, what the God almighty, dude.
Yeah. And he was conniving too, man. Like, just to talk to him and stuff, he was extremely conniving. He tried to put on that poor old man attitude, but I can tell you right now, when you would see him talk to people in public and stuff, it was totally different than when he talked to me.
Yeah.
Like, totally different when he talked to me. He was like, you get that. And especially once you've done that stuff and worked with guys and been around, and you start to see those certain characteristics and the things that they do, and you kind of get that vibe from them. And he was clearly that guy.
Did he run the what's it called? Is it rail trail?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that where he sold ice cream, or did he go downtown, or did it vary?
He'd go all around, but like during the summers and stuff, he spent the majority of his time up towards New River Pool, and then he would go the rails to trails and stuff like that once it come in. But he was around long before rails to trails even got there. So, but when he got jumped, it was on rails to trails when those.
Does that place get a bad name? I hear a lot of things. I'm curious about it. I've never went on it. I'm just, because I ride bikes, but I always go to, Paul Klein.
Yeah.
But I've never went on the trail. So should I try it, or what do we?
There's a lot of bad stuff that happens on there. It's just like any other, which, Beckley does a pretty good job. The chief there and the assistant chief and stuff, they're great guys. And
do they still have a bike cop?
I don't know. I think so. I think they do, but they do a really good job of that. And they've had guys on those trails. Even back when I was there, we'd go on those trails, but it's just like any other dark hole. Whenever you're not there, something's going to surface. You know what I mean? And we would patrol it, catch people there. And I don't want to say it was anything ever when I was out there that was ever super. And there's bad stuff that's happened on there, but
then there's bad stuff that's happened a lot of places,
So, but I think I don't think it's terrible, but
go during the day would be the suggestion.
Yeah. But even during the day, we'd get, sometimes you'd have stupid stuff like people huffing paint, hitting the air duster and doing all that different stuff out there and harassing people or doing something stupid. But it wasn't necessarily a lot of violent crime, but it was crime nonetheless. And people would be more so bothered by what they saw than, what they were subjected to.
Sure. As, as we continue to grow, the homeless population continues to grow. Is there a stigma there, you think? Like, I'm curious, did you interact with a lot of homeless folks? I know the people I've met, like I've volunteered in the community and stuff, and people are really good people, and I think sometimes they get a bad name. But in your opinion, that population, what is that like, that your dealings with that community?
Well, I've been all over, and I can tell you from working in the city and everything else, I don't think our problem in that category is as bad as a lot of other cities, but it definitely does exist. It definitely creates somewhat of a problem to a certain degree, but I don't think necessarily like the problems that some of these bigger cities that I've been to have, where you're just walking around and they're everywhere, or they're causing problems. But they do cause problems.
A segment of the population, a certain number of the population does.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I know one problem to give you an idea about that is that, which kind of ties into that, is, people, everybody, myself included. I mean, you see certain people out here panhandling and stuff. You go to dealing with that, and it's like, you feel bad for the guy, or you feel bad for whoever, and you want to help them out, but at what cost? Right. So, I mean, sometimes you can tell, but some people do that stuff professionally. Right. And some people think that, like, I tell you right now, I went to a certain intersection here in the city once, and these guys were dressed up and belonged to some church that wasn't that wasn't from here. And so, like, they were always showing up, and that kind of bugs me that people come, and because people would complain a lot about that, right?
Sure.
Being held up, and people coming up, knocking on their windows, especially women with kids in their car. They don't like that.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Aggressiveness. Like, it's one thing, like, you'll see the people where they're kind of like, asking for food and different things like that. When they get aggressive, it's a little scary.
So basically, these guys are the nice dressed guys, and they're supposed to be from this church. So I'm like, man, where are y'all from? They didn't have a permit, and you have to have a permit to do that for different things. So I started looking to see if they had a permit. My goal wasn't to run off a church. You know what I mean?
Make sure it's legitimate.
I just want to make sure it's legit. So I start checking on the church. They tell me all this information. I pull over and I start looking. I look, and I can't find the church. So I go around. I'm like, hey, I can't find this church, man. I need to see who are y'all with? What are you doing here? You don't have a permit. Just give me your stuff. Man, I run this stuff. These guys had felony charges from all the way to the West Coast for kidnapping, assault, all kinds of stuff.
Do you instantly tase them? Or
no, I was like, you got to go now. You got to go now.
Right.
And like, you don't have a permit. You want to get it, you go file for the stuff and you come back. But you're not going to stay here, because, I mean, how can you at that point? You know what I mean? It was, you see that kind of stuff, and everybody, I haven't been there since 2015, late 2015, 2016. So, I mean, but I know those guys there. I mean, I don't know a lot of the newer, I know a lot of the newer ones, but I don't know them all. But all the guys that I know were from there, were stand-up guys, did the same job I did. So, I mean, they all looked into things like that. We worked together. So, I mean, there's a lot of great guys, again, that work there. And, that's why I say overall as a community, I feel like the community's happy with what they do. I mean, there's naturally going to be a few complaints. And I mean, maybe a few of those complaints, not necessarily even Beckley, but that they've been justified. But at the same time, you're talking about a couple of people versus an entire police department.
Yeah. Well, and now at the same time, like, you see it all the time. I just watched a video of a guy being so nice to this dude, getting him out of the truck, trying to just do a traffic stop. And he goes around the truck, and the guy pulls out an AK out of his truck, aims it, kills him dead on the side of the road.
Mm-hmm.
Police officer.
Is that the one that happened out towards New Mexico?
I think.
And he basically executed him with a head. After he shot him, he walks up and headshots him. Yeah.
It's devastating.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that I look at of like, thank goodness this position exists. For one, I couldn't do it. Two, you've got a lot of dangerous people. I mean, like 1% of people are psychopaths.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand, them handling certain situations in certain ways, because you just never know. Because this guy was just nice, talking back and forth, got out, pulled out a gun, and then he's probably he probably has a family. And that's the stuff I look at of like, you can't, it's very gray. Now, granted, have there been shootings that shouldn't have happened? Of course.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand that job is probably, you're at a stress level up to here, probably nearly most of the day, unless you're like, working at a school and handing out hot dogs or something, some kind of community initiative. I could only imagine how stressful it is. So that's kind of what I look at. And I like you mentioning the training, like, I think the training aspect, obviously, and you teach, I don't even think we talked about it. You mentioned it, but you teach criminal justice at college?
Yeah, Bluefield State University. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, funny thing, one of the semesters I dropped out, I was going to be a state policeman and I was taking criminal justice, and I lasted all of 3 weeks, but I didn't get into any of the actual courses. I was in like 099 math.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you mean I don't get credit for this class? I'd be like out, but thankfully somehow I ended up paying the bills. But, so that's, how many days a week do you dedicate to that?
Generally 4, depends on what's going on. But I mean, I'm at different, I work back and forth between Irma Bird and Bluefield.
Oh, cool.
And then I do the private investigating business.
Awesome. Well, I think this was awesome. 2 hours of quality discussions, in my opinion. Go ahead and let people know, shout out your business. Where can people reach you if they need to catch their cheating spouse or their, embezzling, potentially murdering spouse, or even if it's not your spouse, where can they reach out?
Well, and to say this is I work on the criminal defense side, but it is an important factor to me that I help people that are innocent, or at least, you know what I mean? I'm not, and that's one big question, and I'll answer real quick is a lot of people ask me, how do you go from working on that side to working on this side? It's not a game where I go in and try to say, hey, this guy did that. Like you would ask me if I would be the investigator on Natalie Cochran's case, the answer would be no, not a chance. So I don't just do anything. You know what I'm saying? So,
well, would that be because of your involvement?
No, I mean, naturally I would conflict out because of that. But if I didn't know and didn't have involvement in it, would I do it? No.
Gotcha.
Because it would be, and even if I didn't know her and looked at the case, and the minute that I looked at that evidence, then I would be like, there's nothing. It's not a matter of me looking till I find something that proves you innocent. You understand? Unless you are innocent. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I sleep at night, right? So
sure.
But there are innocent people that get caught up and don't get a fair shake from the system. Like I said, it's not nearly the population that actually is being caught up in what they're in. But there are people out there that is the wrong place, wrong time. This adds up to this. Maybe sometimes the system fails, and investigation goes wrong, and bad things happen. So that does happen. So that's what I tend to get into.
And you mentioned to me too, like if someone is guilty, they shouldn't come to you because you're going to investigate. And if you find someone guilty of something, the truth is going to speak.
Yes. Most certainly. Especially it's in all of it. So, it doesn't, but naturally I hold a special place for like child crimes and stuff because of the fact that I've dealt with that. I know, and I don't even, if I think that there's any chance that, but you see a lot of that stuff because like, especially in custody battles, people get accused of stuff a lot of times that it's just not all there. You know what I mean? And there's issues, and there's a lot of stuff we could get into maybe later on, but
sure. I sense like we got to have a part 2 eventually,
but my business is Armed Security Investigations and Consulting Firm, Inc. But, DBA is ARMSIC, ARMSIC, and website's, armsicfirm.com, and all my information to reach me if that anybody would need would be on there. My email, my phone number, all that.
And you was telling about the credential page. It's like, or the CV page.
Yeah. And my CV's on there. I've got all my information on there down to all of my stuff. And I have a link to anybody because I put the CV on there so all the attorneys can sit. Everybody can just view what my history is. It gives my whole police, college teaching, trainings, all the stuff. Everything about me is on there as far as training wise, and all the way from my associate's degree to my doctorate degree, which I'm in the dissertation of right now. So, everything about me is on there.
Good for you, man. That's awesome. Well, yeah, check him out if you're a law firm needing a private eye. One of the best in the area. I'll say that. No, you're the only one I know in the area, but you're legit to me. So I appreciate you coming in. Everyone else, be sure to like this video, subscribe to Creepalachia if you haven't already. And if you're listening to the audio version on Apple or Spotify, be sure to leave a review. Those reviews will help the show get found. And we are on Facebook, have a really good community building there. We are on TikTok and Instagram. And all that being said, above all else, everyone please remember, long live Appalachia.